Okay, today we're going to be talking about Chapter 1, Equations and Inequalities. 1-1 is expressions and formulas. So with this stuff, a lot of this should be pretty decent review for you. If you're confused, just make sure you make a note, ask me a question later. All right, so we usually start with vocabulary. I ask you if you can think of these terms on your own without me giving you the answer first. And if you can, you're a little bit more likely to remember it. And if not, then that's fine. I'll go ahead and give you the math terminology and we could try to put it in some more layman's terms later. So the first word that we have today is variables. Think to yourself, what's a variable? Can you think of an example? Can you put it in words? A variable, usually most people think of as a letter, and that's true. So it's letters used to represent unknown quantities. So let's write that in. Letters used to represent unknown quantities. Okay? So X, Y, Z, something like that. Next, we have algebraic expressions. Those are expressions that contain at least one variable. So it has algebra in it, right? Expressions that contain at least one variable. Obviously, you want to write these down. If if an example makes more sense to you, in parentheses behind it, put an example down. Formula. Can you think of a formula that you know? Can you think of a way to put it in words? So most of the time, everyone at least has one formula that they know. Pythagorean theorem typically comes to mind. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's a formula. E equals mc squared. That's a formula. Why are those formulas? What do they have in common? The equal sign, right? So a formula is a mathematical sentence that expresses the relationship between certain quantities. A mathematical sentence that expresses the relationship between certain quantities. So typically what I do is in parentheses behind it, I put something that makes a little bit more sense to me. So like we already said, it has an equal sign in it. Okay? Order of operations. You should know what that is by now. What's the order of operations? PEMDAS, right? So PEMDAS. I was always told, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, whatever works for you. What does the P stand for? P stands for parentheses, right? However, we want to think of it more as grouping symbols. In Algebra 2, you're going to have more than just parentheses. You're going to have square roots. You're going to have absolute values. Those are all considered grouping symbols, so that's what really comes first. What does the E stand for? Exponents, right? You all know what an exponent is. The M stands for multiplication. The D is division. You already knew that. But they go on the same line. So with multiplication and division, if they're both in the same problem, how do you know which one to do first? You go left to right, don't you? Whichever one is farther left, you do first. And then A is addition, S is subtraction. You already knew this, right? Addition, subtraction. Same thing. If they're both in the same problem, you go left to right. Okay? So this shouldn't be too tricky yet. Evaluate is probably a word that you've seen before. Evaluate basically just means solve or find the answer, but simplify is probably a better word to think of. So with evaluate, typically you just get a number as your answer and there aren't any letters left. So your answer is like 7, not 7x plus 2. So typically if it says evaluate, you have just a number and no letters. So let's say typically Just a number answer. Probably, you could say no letters, or let's use the fancy term, no variables, right? Okay, so that's it for the actual note part, and now we're just going to do a few examples. So if you go to number 1, it says evaluate m plus p minus 1 squared if m is 3 and p is negative 4. Think for just a second, what would we do first here? Evaluate means simplify, find the answer, right? We need to substitute first. So instead of an m, we're going to put 3. Instead of a p, we're going to put negative 4. And everything else you just write down. After that first step of substitution, it should be pretty easy. You follow your order of operations, which is PEMDAS. So do we have any parentheses here? Sure, right here. So what is negative 4 minus 1? It's negative 5, isn't it? I don't get rid of my parentheses until I'm completely done with that number. So that number's not done yet because there's an exponent on it. So I'm going to keep the parentheses there. So the next step after parentheses is exponents. So here's our exponent. Be careful when you do this, okay? If you're going to use a calculator, which nobody needs a calculator for negative 5 squared, but if you're going to, you have to put parentheses around that negative 5, or it probably will give you an incorrect answer because your calculator thinks you mean something different. So let's just think. What's negative 5 times negative 5? That's what negative 5 squared means. It's positive 25, isn't it? And then 3 plus 25 is obviously 28. So that problem is now done. See how we had just a number and all the letters disappeared because we substituted. So that's what evaluate meant. So let's try 1a. You go ahead and substitute, and then we'll solve it together. So instead of an m, you put 12. Instead of a q, you put negative 1. After you've substituted, we're going to go ahead and finish the problem. So we have parentheses, which come first. Most of you do keep it, change it, add the opposite, whatever works for you. But either way, that turns into a 3 plus 1. So I have 12 plus 4 squared. Exponents come next. What's 4 squared? 16. And then 12 plus 16 is obviously 28. So our final answer there is 28 as well. Why don't you take a second, try this one, substitute, put in everything that you need to do the math, make sure you pay attention to left or right, and see if you get it right. So instead of an m, we put 12, divided by 2q is negative 1 plus 4. That's the easy part. So from here we have to do PEMDAS. Parentheses come first. These are not really parentheses. Those really are are showing a symbol for multiplication. So these are true parentheses. You could actually do something inside of the problem. These are not. These are really multiplication. So we have division, multiplication, and addition. What should we do first? We should do the division first because going left to right, that's what comes first in this problem. With multiplication and division, you go left to right. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. And then that's times negative 1 plus the 4. Multiplication comes next, negative 6 plus 4, and that's obviously negative 2. Super easy. If you're confused, pause, take a second, write down a question that you have. If not, let's keep going. All right, so 2a. Evaluate a plus b squared, parentheses b minus a if a is 5 and b is negative 3.2. So for this, I want you to go ahead and try it without me. So go ahead and substitute, use a calculator probably for this one with the 3.2 if you want, and then see if you get the answer right. So pause it and try the question. So for 2a, you should have gotten negative 78.968. If you did get that answer right, there's no reason for you to watch me go through it. You could go ahead and try letter B and see if you get that one right. If you got it wrong, finish watching and I'll go ahead and work it out with you. So a plus b squared, a is a 5 plus b, negative 3.2 squared, parentheses, negative 3.2 minus 5. Order of operations says parentheses come first. So this is really parentheses. This is not, right? So this is our grouping symbol. So what's negative 3.2 minus 5? And that's going to be negative 8.2. And then you just write everything else down. Don't try to do too much at once, okay? So what comes after parentheses? Exponents. Here's an exponent, correct? If you put this in your calculator, make sure you put negative 3.2 in parentheses. That matters. Negative 3.2 squared is 10.24. So we have 5 plus 10.24 still times the negative 8.2. So next is multiplication. And 10.24 times negative 8.2 is going to give us, you can write 5 plus if you want to, negative 83.968. But typically a plus and a minus is a little bit weird. I probably would have just made that a minus sign, but since you're going to put it in your calculator anyway, you could punch it in this way. And what's your final answer? Negative 78.968. Very good. So for letter B, same thing. Substitute, try it without me, see if you can get it right, and if you get it right, go ahead and move on to the next question. If you get it wrong, watch me work it out. Letter B ends up giving you negative 47 over 39. You may have gotten a decimal or a mixed fraction that could be the same. If you know how to check something like that, go ahead and check it. And if not, you could ask me that in class tomorrow. So x to the 4 is going to be negative 3 to the 4 minus 3. W is 4. Y is negative 5 all over. Y cubed is going to be negative 5 to the 3rd plus 2 times W. That's step 1. After that, whenever you have a fraction, typically I work with just the numerator and make it as simplified as possible, and then the denominator, and same thing, and then I shove the two together. So I'm just going to look at the top for right now. Order of operations, none of these are true parentheses. There's an exponent though, so negative 3 to the 4th power is positive 81. With this second part, I see a negative, a positive, and a negative with multiplication. So what's a negative times a positive give you times another negative? Well, that's just one big plus sign, isn't it? And then 3 times 4 times 5, if you want to use a calculator, you can. That's 60. So then we just say 81 plus 60 is 141. So now try the denominator. Order of operations, you're going to cube that first. Negative 5 cubed is negative 125. And then that's obviously a plus 8. Negative 125 plus 8 is negative 117. With this, you do need to simplify if you can with fractions the whole year. You're always going to simplify a fraction. So you can plug this into your calculator and it will give you negative 47 over 39 or whatever decimal or mixed fraction equivalent that is. I don't ever care how you give me an answer as long as it's reduced and you're not rounding. So I'm going to keep it negative 47 over 39. If you have a question about that, write a note and let me know tomorrow. For this last part, evaluate each expression if h is 4, j is negative 1, and k is 0.5. I want you to try 2a, 2b, and 2c. I am just going to put the answers up. If you get them wrong, you're going to ask me in person tomorrow. And don't erase your work. If you get it wrong, I'd like to see where you messed up so that way we can fix that problem. If I just keep showing you the right way all the time, you're never going to learn whatever mistake you're making, and then you'll keep making that mistake again. So if you get it wrong, circle it, put a star by it. Do not erase the wrong work. I need to see it. So go ahead and after I finish talking, pause the video, try A, B, and C, check them with mine, and then we'll finish with number 3 together. For 2A, you should end up getting 22. For 2B, you should end up getting 0. And for 2C, you should get negative 23. If you got those right, great. If you missed one or two, ask me a question. Let's go ahead and do number 3. It's on page 6. I didn't want to type it out or show the picture or anything. It's already in your book. So if you have your book, great. If not, check it tomorrow. So on page 6, number 3, it says real world example, and it has a tornado in the picture. So let's go ahead and read the question, and then we'll do it together. The formula for the volume of a cone, V equals 1/3 pi r squared h, can be used to approximate the volume of a tornado. Find the approximate volume of the tornado at the right. So if you look at the picture at the right, they give us a few pieces of information that you have to know how to use. Whenever you have a story problem, you always want to read it twice, pick out the important information, write down the formula, try to plug stuff in, see what you can do. So go ahead and read it again and see if you can find the important pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my formula that they gave me, V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, what did they really want me to do? They wanted to find the approximate volume. So I'm looking for V. So I'm going to have to replace r and h with a number or else I can't find v. So if you look at your picture, first of all, what's r stand for? Well, the radius, right? What's h stand for? The height. So if you look at your picture, what is r? R is 75 meters. And what is h? What's the height of the cone? 225 meters. So from here, you're going to plug this into your calculator. It's super easy. There's not a whole lot of thought process involved. Your calculator should do the order of operations for you if you plug it in correctly. However, if you don't know where your pi button is, go ahead and for now use 3.14159. But tomorrow, make sure you show me your specific calculator that you plan on using this year, and I can show you where that pi button is. From now on, you really want to use the pi button to give a more accurate answer. So for this volume, I'm approximating, so that means approximately. These two squiggly lines is approximate, and you end up getting 1,325,359 meters cubed because volume is cubic, correct? So that's your final answer. If you have any questions, please let me know how I can help you. Take a note, watch it again, or whatever you need to do.